Kenny, you ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Oklahoma City Economic Development Trust meeting for January 31st, 2023. First item is to call the meeting to order. Item number 2 is minutes from the September trust meeting. Are there any questions or comments? If not, we can take a motion. We have a motion and a second for approval. Please cast your votes. And the item is approved. Brings us to item 3 on the agenda, the ratification of claims. If we have no questions or comments, we can take a motion. We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. And that item passes as well. Brings us to item 4, items for individual consideration. Item 4A is approving the addendum number 2 to the West Village Project Economic Development Agreement. Mr. Sudol.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So this is a project that's 345 apartments, parking garage, mixed-use space. This is over by the 21C Hotel, east of Classen, between Main and Sheridan. This original agreement was from 2018. This is really trying to get this closed out. What we ran into was part of our original agreement had a requirement that any financing would have to subordinate to our interests. HUD is the financing institution on this, and we ran into an issue that they did not want to subordinate on this. After consultation with staff and legal, we determined this is really a pay-in, pay-out, so we're okay with amending this to take that requirement out. If the developer did not pay in their taxes, they would not receive any incentive. We would terminate the agreement. So we felt like legal feels like this is a good place to be, and it's really just the last step trying to get this agreement closed out.
And I believe they've been paying everything on time, but we were not able to pay them their incentive, sorry. Yeah, so
You're on.
so they've been paying, so we really feel like there is a very little risk at this point to agree to HUD. They're acknowledging Arlene, but just not saying that it takes priority over theirs.
So is it pari passu? We're on the same level as the HUD financing? Or we,
No, we would
Okay.
be after.
so we're
after them.
subordinate?
Yes, we
Okay.
are subordinate. So
Okay.
this would amend it. We normally ask for the primary lender to subordinate to our liens,
Mm-hmm.
but normally that's in a case where we're advancing funding. It's
Okay.
not
You're
in
doing the
some-
upfront.
like where we have
Yeah, the
more
upfront
risk.
financing, yeah, that makes
Yes.
sense. Okay.
Any other comments or questions? No? If not, we can take a motion on the item. We have a motion and a second. Please vote. And the item passes. Brings us to item 4B, the Oklahoma City Economic Development Trust fiscal year 2021-2022 annual financial report.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Christy Jamison from our accounting department is here to present on the report. Christy?
Good afternoon. Again, my name is Christy Jamison. I'm one of the assistant controllers in the accounting services division of the finance department. And today I'm just going to give you a brief update on the audited financial report for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2022. So our external auditors audited the financials, Allen Gibson Hulick, otherwise known as AGH, and included on page 5 of the financial report is the independent auditor's report, and they issued an unmodified opinion, which basically means it was a clean audit. The financial statements are prepared in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles and presented fairly in all material respects. There were no findings in the audit. However, you might remember that last year there was an audit finding, and that is still included in the comparative report for this year, but it will come out next year. Overall, the trust net position increased to $40.6 million, increased by $40.6 million to a negative $25.6 million for the year. And this was compared to last year's net position of a negative $66.2 million. And as you might recall, a negative net position is typical for this type of trust, as it is a conduit for the city. It issues debt, and as we spend down resources, that remaining debt that's being paid results in a negative net position. Also, I might refer you to the management's discussion and analysis. It's included in pages 9 through 14 of the financial report, and it goes into much further detail of the changes over the prior year. Total debt for the trust at June 30 was $235 million, and this was down from the prior year of $261 million. This was primarily due to the fact that we did issue Series 2021 A and B tax apportionment bonds, but they were refunding the Series 2013 apportionment bonds, and then, of course, also regularly scheduled debt payments that were made during the year. The bond ratings remain the same at June 30, 2022, AA plus by Standard & Poor's, and those are considered excellent ratings. And with that, I would be happy to address any questions you might have.
Any questions or comments from Ms. Jamison? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great news. Great job. Do we need to receive that? Okay. If I can get a motion to go ahead and receive the financial report. We have a motion and a second. Oh, there we go. Please vote. And the item's passed. Thank you again. Brings us to item 4C, the Oklahoma City Economic Development Trust Retail Recruitment and Development Presentation by Ms. Fate.
Hello, thank you. So Tammy Fate, Senior Manager of Economic Development for Retail Development and Recruitment. So just wanted to give you kind of an update, talk a little bit about retail trends, what we saw in 2022, new and existing developments that we've been a part of, ongoing engagement, and then some of the announcements that were made in 2022. So to kick things off, let's talk a little bit about the industry trends. So 37% of monthly retail sales were made online. Education is really key when shopping, so omni-channels create more meaningful shopping experiences that really tie the brands together. I think Kohl's is a good example of that with what they've partnered with Amazon to do, take back and things like that. It shows that basically people spend anywhere from $130 to $160 more when they're in the store. So if you can get somebody in the store, there's a bigger chance that they're going to spend more. Automated technology has really helped with labor shortage, and it helps with tracking orders, managing customer loyalty programs, and it helps landlords in terms of the smart property management. So if somebody's going to be late paying for rent or something like that, then they can track this a lot quicker. So there's a lot of automated technology that's helping realize when retailers are in need of help or assistance. Same-day delivery, so with supply chain issues, this gives retailers a clear advantage so they can do same-day delivery for impulse shopping. And then I think this is interesting that social commerce is on the rise, so selling products on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. There's a 43% revenue that comes from social media. Interactive retail, so virtual reality, live stream shopping experiences, using iPads to showcase what's in the store. And you're really seeing lines are blurring between restaurants selling groceries, retailer businesses selling cooking classes. So you're seeing everything kind of morphed into one, and that's why it's so important for mixed-use developments. And community investment is really key. So 68% of retailers are planning on participating in more community initiatives. So a good example of that is Kroger. So when they came to town, they partnered with the local food bank. They gave a huge donation to the food bank. Bar K that's getting ready to open near the Boathouse District, they do all kinds of pet adoption programs. So really tying your brand to something in the community is really key. And the next slide. So Tesla Advisors, which is a retail organization that closely monitors retail activity, shows that there's more companies that are wanting to get in that physical footprint. So the work from home has actually changed how we're shopping. So U.S. grocery and pharmacy anchored suburban retail centers saw a 12 to 15% more traffic in 2022 versus 2019. And then they saw also the highest rent growth in neighborhood strip shopping centers that were 5% out of other retail destinations. So you're seeing a higher rent in some of the suburban areas as well as higher traffic. And as I mentioned earlier, like the consumers who spend money more when they shop in person. So this is just showing how a lot of companies are really trying to get that in store. So even if they're doing a lot of online purchases, they still need that physical footprint as well. So omni-channel is really key. So here's just kind of a rundown of some projects that we work on kind of throughout the year. So Producers Co-op site, permits have been pulled to start the first phase of this development, which will include multifamily. There's several new-to-market tenants that have shown interest in this area. So we work with Sooner Investment at all the major trade shows and help promote this site. So the Oak, multiple new-to-market tenants that were announced in 2022. This area is really poised to change that whole retail landscape. So with Restoration Hardware, Art House, and Capitol Grill. Strawberry Fields, first phase will include the multifamily component. We continue to work with out-of-state developers to kind of showcase this site, as well as the architects on updating the renderings to really talk about the latest things that are happening in downtown. There's 2 developments that are in the works at 13th and Broadway. So New Stream Capital is out of Texas. They just submitted something to Downtown Design Review. And then there's a local development group that's actively working on an area in this corridor as well. So the Half, which is located halfway between Edmond and downtown, they will be announcing a new-to-market tenant, which is an entertainment user, 93,000 square feet. So this should happen sometime in the next few months. This will be a huge add to Oklahoma City, and it'll be new to market to the only one in the state. So Nova, they received the incentive for the grocery component and also hopes to be moving forward in the next few months. They've partnered with a group out of Denver that is helping them with the food component and the kind of the makeup of what they're going to do with that site. The Dream Hotel project, it includes 924 residential units, 3 towers, 350 hotel rooms, 41,000 square feet of retail and restaurant space, along with 1,800 parking spaces. So we've been working with Randy Hogan, also Madison Capital, to help find the tenants for the retail component of that. So we have two possible prospects for that. Chisholm Creek, working on an independent hotel concept, additionally multifamily units, and they should have several new retailers announcing later this year. And then Okana, really just trying to help tell the story that's around that. So there's a lot of vacant land in that general area, so trying to showcase that area and kind of help clean up that whole corridor. And then Convergence, really just adding to the development downtown and the momentum at the Innovation District. So ongoing engagement, housing growth maps, that's one thing that the City of Oklahoma City, the Planning Department, has been really good with. So really kind of telling the story about the housing growth and the efforts to attract new development. I think we do at least one of these a week, and it's basically showing out-of-state developers where the housing growth is, where the new housing is, what's existing, and that really kind of helps paint the picture. Providing data and research to the major shopping center destinations, such as sales tax generation, tenant prospects, and then tourism information. So now with Omni, a lot of the existing major shopping centers are reaching out to try to get more data, just because they're feeding that information back to their corporate headquarters that could be in Chicago or somewhere else. The commercial retail districts, so meeting with the executive directors of each of these districts and seeing how we can collaborate to promote the local retail offerings that are within each of these districts. We do a campaign twice a year called Stand Tall, Shop Small, and it's an opportunity to really kick off, like July is the slowest shopping month for most retailers, so we get all the district managers together, host a lunch, and talk about stories and things that could be beneficial for us to highlight and promote the local flavor of Oklahoma City. So B2B partnerships are really key. So once somebody locates in Oklahoma City, it's really trying to get them integrated into Oklahoma City. So a good example is Bar K. So they will be opening. I would highly encourage everybody to go check it out. But they've been a master at really creating the private partnerships. So it's connecting them to like Threshold and like rock climbing gyms and breweries. And, you know, they move here and to try to get them really integrated in our culture. Really supporting the independent shopkeepers through sponsorship opportunities, maintaining ongoing relationships to really understand what the needs are of local retailers. So we helped out with the holiday pop-up shops. Also, we sponsor their publication each year. So they are a master of kind of working with the locals and getting that information so we know what locals need in order to grow. We do a lot of outreach to DFW. There's a lot of concepts that kind of consider Oklahoma City an arm of Texas. And normally we don't want to be an arm of Texas, but since they are like growing so rapidly, we do a tremendous amount of lead generation out of Texas. And then lastly, new store openings. So really meeting with companies that open new retail locations, trying to get them connected to resources and collaborate with other local business owners. So one of my favorites is Bar K. So this has been a labor of love for at least 3 to 4 years. So it's nice to see that it's finally close to opening. And then the next slide really just lists some of our engagement. So we attend a lot of shows annually. So most of the time I'm probably on the road, and volunteering on a lot of these different trade shows is really key for us because it allows us to bring people in from Oklahoma City. We just did the ICSC Red River Show, and every single panel we had somebody from Oklahoma City represented.
Yes.
So it's just an opportunity to kind of showcase what's happening here and have somebody on the private sector telling the message for us. So we were involved in the ULI Next Americas, which is a global organization. So there's people on there from Canada, from Mexico, and to be able to talk about Oklahoma City, I think is really important. And then lastly, here's kind of a quick recap of the major announcements that happened in 2022. And with that, I will take any questions.
Tammy, a handful of years ago, we had, the conversations were not as robust because they were all questioning the density of our market. Have you seen, some of the outside retailers and their interest about Oklahoma City? Have you seen a change in that?
It has. We've had some meetings with some retailers that we weren't able to get previously that now are wanting us to sign NDAs and that want to come to our market, which I think is really impressive. So I think when you talk about that we have 1 in 10 employees that are in the aerospace sector, it really kind of changes the landscape for people. There's a lot of companies in California that are wanting more information because there's a lot of people that are leaving California and wanting to come here. So just being able to talk about, our employment and our diversity in sectors is really key. So it is getting much easier. And there's like Texas, I feel like Dallas, the competition is so strong there that there's a lot of developers and brokers in the Dallas area that are kind of starting to look into Oklahoma City now. So it makes it much easier.
Well, you said we were the arm of Texas. We're the heart of Texas.
I like that.
I don't even like Texas.
Anybody else?
Any other questions, comments?
All
Nope.
right.
I'd just like to say thank you to Tammy. Does work with my staff a lot. I think, we mentioned a lot of those developments and they're differing stages from concept to happening and under construction. And she's always been a great resource helping us kind of match developers and opportunities up with retailers, both national and local. So we do a lot of strategizing together. They really put a lot of work in. So thanks to
Thank
the
you.
chamber. And all.
Great. Do we have an opening date for Bar K?
They were supposed to have a soft opening events this week, and they got pushed because of the weather. So last night was going to be a ULI event. It's moved to Friday, and then they should be full open next week. So
Wow.
it's amazing. The partnerships and the amount of detail, the artwork. They've thought of every partnership opportunity that you can think of. So it's really impressive to see the amount of detail there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'll take a motion to receive. We have a motion and a second. Please vote. And the item passes. Brings us to item 4D, to receive the amended Oklahoma Riverfront Redevelopment Project Plan. Ms. McSpadden.
Good afternoon. So I'm going to present to you the proposed changes that were approved by City Council at their last meeting 2 weeks ago. And really, it is comprised of two main changes. We proposed a budget change and then boundary changes for the project area. And so I'll show you the map. First, I'm going to start with the budget. Go back to that first slide, sorry, Sarah. This will kind of give you an idea of the meetings that we've held. So we've met with quite a few groups to present the plan, and now we're presenting it to you all to receive for implementation, as that's what we will be responsible for here. Okay, so the budget, the current budget, you can see there kind of in the center was 28.3 million. We consolidated some categories, expanded categories. We added the assistance and development financing, which you all are probably familiar with as kind of our catch-all for various development projects that we'll do. So we've netted an increase of 6 million for a total budget of 34.2 million. Just below that, you'll see what we've spent so far. And so that will leave us with a budget available of almost 21 million. And then the section below that, I'm kind of showing what our cash picture looks like. So we have about 4 million. And of course, this is a couple of months old. So if you go back and look at the general manager's report, it's probably going to show more than that. And then we're projecting about 15 million in collections over the remaining life of that TIF district, for just under 20 million total expected. So we'll have enough budget capacity, hopefully, to capture all of the expected cash over the next few years. So then this picture kind of shows the projected expansion of the project area. So keep in mind, we're not proposing a change to the increment area. So we're not proposing an increase in the area where the taxes are generated. The area that's highlighted in blue is the footprint of the Dell site. That's where the sales tax district exists. And then the hashed red and white lines is the ad valorem increment district, and we're not making any changes to those. Prior to this change, the project area was actually the exact same footprint as the ad valorem area. So you can get an idea of kind of what that looked like before, and then we're proposing to expand it to these kind of 3 distinct areas. We worked with the planning department pretty heavily on this, and this has actually been in the works since Mr. McAtee was on the city council, so this was something we've been working on for quite a while. And so the next few slides kind of give you an idea of sort of the landscape that we're looking at for the proposed expansion area. You can see the uses pretty heavily commercial and industrial on those 2 west side. And then the east side, we're really going to kind of focus in that area around the stockyards. The next slide shows you the change in value. We excluded the outlet mall because that was kind of an outlier in that far western section. And you can see that we haven't had we've had a decline in market value there. We've had some increases in the other 2 areas, but I'll tell you that the increase in citywide during the same time frame was about 30%. So these pale in comparison to that. And so we're kind of showing that there's been some stifled growth in those areas. This will show you the construction and sales activity in the areas. I will tell you that the far west side, those kind of bright blue where it shows that there's been some activity, that was actually the dissolution of a trust. So those were just transfers between like entities. And so really there's not been a lot of activity. And so the hope is that maybe this can help spur some activity. The next slide shows the age of the structures. And so it gives you an idea of kind of we're working with 40 to 60-year-old structures that will likely probably need some renovation or improvements over the next few years, or probably years prior to this. And then the next 2 slides, or the next slide maybe, so this shows projects that we have in the bond or sales tax plan for upcoming. And so these are infrastructure projects that are planned, and the idea here is that perhaps we could use some TIF funding to fill in some gaps. And so those would be infrastructure projects that we would propose to kind of utilize to help make those dollars go farther for those bond projects and the sales tax. I think that's the last slide. Is that right, Sarah? Okay. I'm happy to answer questions.
Any questions? Comments? No? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I'll take a motion to receive the report. We have a motion and a second. Please vote. And the item passes. Brings us to item 5 on the agenda, the General Manager's Report. Mr. Sudol.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, so that's included in your packet. It's the normal information. There's not a lot abnormal to point out on the financial piece of that. I did want to have Joanna make just one more kind of update and comment on, towards the end, there's a report on our SIP program and kind of where we're at on that. And we had given you an update a couple of meetings ago that we were looking at some of those and trying to follow up on them, so.
Yeah, so a couple of months ago on that SIP report, you will notice I had asterisks again, next to a couple of the companies where we were gonna terminate those agreements. We were able to reallocate, we'll say, about $4 million by eliminating a few of those contracts that had just been inactive. And we've got about 4 or 5 million more kind of on the table that I'm working through with the companies. So our process was to reach out to the companies, to kind of talk through the agreements and say, you know, here are the terms and what's going on. And so we're still working with some of those. And I will let you guys know that there's a clause, and it's in all of our EDAs for the SIP deal, for the SIP program, is if a company is more than 120 days late in providing their annual reports, we reduce the incentive by half. And really the idea there is they came to us for the incentive, and the idea was that it was critical to the needs of locating in Oklahoma City, and if it's not that, because they're so late in applying, then maybe we don't need those funds quite as much. And so we're pursuing that on a lot of these. And so it will end up, what it'll happen is it'll just reduce the allocation that we have. So, and most of those I've been working with Amy, and almost all of those agreements have the ability for us to just terminate if they don't meet certain terms. So we won't have to bring back anything to you all, hopefully, but if we have some, we may have some activity that we need you all to take action on. But for the most part, we've been able to just kind of let those terminate on their own.
And again, I want to reiterate, I think I did a couple meetings ago, that we try to make sure we're being good partners and not being,
Yeah.
overly heavy-handed with folks, trying to work with them as much as we can, but sometimes they just weren't able to
Right.
meet the obligations, or
Yep.
they didn't produce what they needed to produce. So, and that is important. I do want to stress this program's been so successful. I think one of our challenges has been, the amount of money available has been shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And that's something that the chamber and I and Joanna, we think very strategically about where we try to, target that as we're chasing prospects and things. So it's one of those, just trying to make sure we're using this in an effective way, and that, if folks aren't performing and we think they're never going to perform, making sure we sort of free that up to go chase other jobs, other opportunities. So just wanted to kind of keep you all in the loop on that.
Thank you. All right, item 6 on the agenda is comments from staff. Any comments? No? Trustees? Have any citizens signed up to speak? Nobody, okay. Well, that brings us to item 7. We are adjourned.